Why did you follow him into a restricted corridor? Dante Vale asked, and the entire ballroom forgot how to breathe. Elena stood beside the overturned silver tray with blood darkening the white apron beneath her broken name tag. A wine glass rolled in a slow circle near her shoe. Above the service door, the security camera blinked red. Vivian touched her own palm as if the slap had hurt her more. Because he wasn't a waiter, Elena said. 3 hours earlier, Elena Marrow had been polishing fingerprints from crystal stems in the service pantry, while Baltimore Harbor burned orange beyond the restaurant's glass walls. Vale House smelled of beeswax, expensive perfume, and the salt that came off the docks after sunset. 100 guests were expected for Dante Vale's rehearsal dinner. Senators, shipping executives, lawyers whose watches cost more than Elena made in a year. Curtis Bell, the floor manager, moved between the staff with a clipboard pressed to his chest. No improvising tonight, he said. His eyes paused on Elena's apron, then on the narrow curve of her waist beneath it. And try not to draw attention. The Cross family has standards. Elena kept drying the glass. So does the health department. The busboy beside her hid a smile. Curtis did not. Elena had learned years ago that cruel men preferred gratitude from the people they insulted. She gave him accuracy instead. At 7:43, she noticed the first wrong thing. A temporary server crossed the pantry carrying no tray, no linen, and no wine key. His black catering jacket fit through the shoulders but pulled tight at the wrists, as though borrowed from a smaller man. He wore silver gloves. Vale House had banned metallic gloves 8 months earlier after a guest's allergy complaint. Elena looked toward Curtis. He was busy bowing to Vivian Cross. Vivian stood beneath the chandelier in ivory silk, one hand resting lightly on Dante's arm. She looked kind from a distance. Up close, her smile never reached the people carrying plates. Elena checked the staff board. Every temporary worker had a blue mark beside the name. The man with silver gloves had no name at all. He passed through the service. Door leading toward the private records corridor. A red-edged key card flashed between his fingers. Elena set down her polishing cloth and followed. Not quickly. Quickly made people notice. She carried an empty tray and walked as if she had been sent. At the corner, the man came out of the B-17 passage and struck her shoulder. A folded guest transfer receipt slipped from beneath his sleeve. Elena caught it before it hit the floor. The printed name made her stop. Michael Rusk. She had seen that name once before on a private dinner receipt Curtis later claimed had never existed. Michael Rusk had also been dead for 11 months. The man reached for the paper. Elena folded it under her thumb, tore off the carbon corner, and slipped that sliver behind her plastic name tag. You dropped something, she said. He looked at the name over her heart, then at her face. So did you. He walked away before she understood. At 10:26, during the final champagne service, Elena saw him again near the head table. Vivian saw Elena see him. The bride stepped into her path with a smile soft enough for photographs. You've done enough tonight, sweetheart. Elena lowered her voice. That man used a dead employee's name. For 1 second, Vivian's fingers tightened around the stem of her glass. Then the kindness returned. You seem overwhelmed. I saw his key card. People in service positions sometimes mistake access for importance. Vivian reached for the tray. One glass tilted. Elena caught it before it fell. That was when Vivian slapped her. The sound was not loud. The silence afterward was. Her ring caught the edge of Elena's name tag and tore it sideways. The metal pin cut through apron cloth and skin. Elena tasted blood where her teeth struck her cheek, but she did not touch her face. She caught the broken tag before it fell. He wasn't on the staff list, she said. Curtis rushed forward. Miss Cross, I am so sorry. Elena has been under pressure. Vivian lowered her eyes with practiced mercy. Please don't punish her. Confusion isn't always a choice. Dante finally rose from the head of the table. He did not look angry. That was worse. He looked at the camera. Above the corridor, then at Elena. Did you follow him? Yes. A murmur moved through the guests. Did you enter B? 17? No, Security Chief Nolan Pierce touched his earpiece. Footage shows her entering the restricted hall, Mr. Vale. Dante's gaze hardened. Elena felt the room decide what she was before he spoke. A thief, a liar, a waitress who had forgotten her place. Then Dante bent, picked up the other half of her name tag, and turned it beneath the chandelier. A blue crescent of carbon ink stained the back of the plastic. His thumb stopped over it. The same blue ink was used only on witness transfer receipts stored inside B-17. Dante did not look at Elena when he closed his hand around the broken plastic. He looked at Nolan Pierce, the security chief. Full footage, he said. Nolan's face did not change, but his right thumb pressed once against the edge of his phone before he answered. Of course. Behind the ballroom doors, the industrial dishwasher started its rinse cycle, a low metallic thunder that made the silence at the head table feel even sharper. Curtis dabbed at the blood on Elena's apron with a white cocktail napkin. He did not ask permission. He rubbed too hard, smearing the red into the fabric. "Let's get you cleaned up," he murmured, smiling for the guests. "You've caused enough concern." Elena caught his wrist. Not tightly, just enough to stop him. "Don't wipe it." Curtis's smile held. "It's blood, Elena. It's evidence." A few guests laughed under their breath, the way people laughed when they wanted cruelty to sound accidental. Vivian lowered her eyes. "She's frightened. Please be gentle with her." The kindness in her voice made Elena feel smaller than the slap had. Dante heard it too. His gaze moved from Vivian's perfect white sleeve to Curtis's hand hovering over the torn apron. "Leave it," he said. Curtis released the napkin. Dante placed the broken half of the name tag on the table beside his bourbon, then turned to Nolan. "Show me." Nolan cast the corridor footage onto a tablet. The video was grainy and silent. Elena appeared at 8:41 p.m., carrying an empty tray. She crossed into the restricted hall. 19 seconds later, she bent near the B-17 door, picked something up, and slipped it beneath her name tag. The man in the silver gloves was visible only from behind. His face never reached the camera. "There," Vivian said softly. "I wish there were another explanation." Elena watched the timestamp. 8 hours 41 minutes and 3 seconds. Then 8 hours 41 minutes and 22 seconds. No frames missing. No visible cut. Still, something tightened in her stomach. "Play it again." Nolan looked at Dante, not her. Dante nodded once. On the second viewing, Elena listened instead of watched. Nothing. No kitchen alarm. No bell from the service door. No crash from the dishwasher rack she remembered hearing when she entered the hall. "The audio is gone," she said. Nolan exhaled through his nose. "The corridor cameras don't record sound. They did last Tuesday." Curtis stepped in. "She would know. She photographs everything." 10 minutes later, Elena's locker stood open beneath the green neon exit sign. Inside were 3 old name tags, a cracked phone without a SIM card, copies of tip sheets, and a black notebook filled with times, table numbers, and initials. Curtis lifted it with 2 fingers. "This is not normal." Elena took it from him. "Neither is having your hours changed after you clock out." Dante's eyes shifted to the schedule pinned above the lockers. Elena's shift had been rewritten in blue ink from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m., placing her off the floor when the first suspicious receipt had been issued. She remembered signing in at 3:52. The old phone vibrated inside the locker. Everyone froze. Elena stared at it. The phone had been dead for 6 days. Nolan picked it up before she could. A new message glowed across the cracked screen. "We have your 50,000. Stop contacting the bride." Dante said nothing. He took his own phone from his pocket and photographed the screen, the altered shift log, and the blood on Elena's apron. Then he asked, very quietly, "Who knew this phone was here?" Curtis answered too fast. "No one." Elena looked down at the locker key still hanging from Curtis's belt. Elena looked from the key on Curtis's belt to the open locker, then back to his face. Curtis followed her eyes and covered the key with one hand. "Managers have access," he said, "for emergencies." My phone turning on after 6 dead days feels like an emergency, Elena said. Vivian gave a small, exhausted smile, the kind people used when they wanted a room to admire their patients. Dante, she's upset. We should not confuse fear with evidence. Dante did not answer her. He held out his hand to Nolan. The phone. Nolan hesitated for half a second before passing it over. Dante turned the cracked device beneath the fluorescent light. No SIM tray had been opened. No charging cable was attached. The battery icon showed 82%.
Elena stepped closer.
That battery swells when it charges. It hasn't been charged. Curtis laughed once. You can tell that by looking? I can tell because I wrapped tape around the back after it split. She pointed. The tape had been replaced. Same color. Cleaner edge. Dante's thumb stopped over the seam. Who repaired it? No one. Elena reached into the locker and pulled out her black notebook. The torn apron scratched against the cut on her chest. But she did not flinch. She flipped to Tuesday's page. Table numbers. Wine orders. Clock times written in narrow, careful lines. At 8:38 tonight, Table 12 ordered a second bottle of Camus. At 8:40, the service bell rang twice because the kitchen sent out the wrong lamb. At 8:41, I followed the man into the corridor. Nolan folded his arms. The footage already shows that. It does not show the bell. The corridor system has no audio. Then it should still show the light. Elena looked at Dante. The service bell flashes red above the pantry door for hearing-impaired staff. It reflects in the glass panel across from B17. Nolan's eyes moved toward the tablet. Too quickly. Dante noticed. Play it again. The footage ran. Elena entered the corridor. The glass panel remained dark. At 8 hours 41 minutes and 11 seconds, her reflection crossed it. At 8 hours 41 minutes and 12 seconds, the image jumped so slightly most people would have missed it. Her left hand moved from her side to the tray without traveling through the space between. Dante leaned closer. Back. Nolan replayed it. Again. The jump remained. 11 frames missing. Less than half a second. Not enough to hide a man. Enough to hide a flash of red light and prove the file had been altered. Vivian's smile thinned. Security systems compress footage all the time. Not in the middle of one person's hand, Elena said. Silence spread through the locker room. The dishwasher shut off behind the wall, and the sudden quiet felt like pressure inside a sealed room. Dante looked at Nolan. Original server copy. Nolan's jaw tightened. That will take time. How much? An hour. Elena shook her head.
No.
The backup refreshes every 15 minutes. Curtis complained about it last month because it slowed payroll. Curtis stared at her. You remember every complaint now? Only the ones that cost people money. Dante's gaze changed then. Not trust. Not yet. But the cold distance in it narrowed. He turned to the open locker and noticed a folded wine order slip wedged beneath the old phone. Elena had not put it there. She knew because she folded receipts lengthwise. This one had been folded into quarters. Dante opened it. 1 bottle of Burgundy. Table 11. 8:36 p.m. There was no table 11 on tonight's seating chart. On the bottom, written in blue carbon ink, was an authorization initial. VC Vivian looked at the slip and said, too softly, that is not my handwriting. Elena looked at the broken name tag in Dante's hand. The blue crescent on the plastic matched the ink exactly. Dante placed the wine order slip on the stainless steel counter between them. He did not accuse Vivian. He did not defend Elena. He simply looked at the initials again. Who writes the transfer orders? He asked. Curtis answered first. Floor management, usually. Sometimes the event office. Vivian folded her hands at her waist. My assistant may have approved something on my behalf. That is hardly unusual. Her tone was calm enough to make Elena sound unreasonable for noticing. Nolan cleared his throat. We can settle this without disrupting the dinner. Have Ms. Marrow sign an incident statement, surrender the phone, and leave the premises until we finish reviewing the footage. He spoke like a man offering mercy. Curtis already had the form ready. He slid it across the counter with a black pen placed neatly on top. Elena read the first line. I entered a restricted area without authorization and removed a confidential document. Her fingers tightened around the edge of her torn apron. The cut beneath it had started to sting with every breath. That isn't what happened. Curtis lowered his voice. It is what the camera shows. The camera is missing frames. A technical issue does not erase your actions. Vivian stepped closer, her perfume soft and expensive in the cramped locker room. Elena, no one wants to ruin your future over one frightened decision. Sign the statement. Go home. Let people with the proper training handle this. The words were gentle. The meaning was not. Proper training. Proper people.
Proper rooms.
Elena looked down at the pen. For 1 second she remembered another office, another manager, another piece of paper that had changed after she signed it. She had been 24 then, standing beneath a buzzing light while a man in a red tie explained that missing tip money was a bookkeeping misunderstanding. By the time she received a copy, her complaint had become an admission of confusion. She had spent 3 years carrying that paper like a stain. Elena pushed the pen back across the counter. I won't sign a lie. Curtis's smile disappeared. Think carefully. I am. From the hallway, the ballroom doors opened and a wave of string music drifted in, polished and beautiful, followed by the low murmur of guests returning to their seats. A woman in diamonds glanced into the locker room, saw Elena's bloodied apron, and quickly looked away. Vivian turned toward Dante. This is becoming cruel. She is clearly distressed. Dante's eyes remained on Elena. Are you? Yes. Her voice did not shake. That does not make me wrong. Something changed in the room. Small. Almost nothing. But Nolan stopped looking at her like a problem and started looking at Dante for instruction. Dante picked up the pen and rolled it once beneath his fingers. Test the initials, he said. Vivian gave a quiet laugh. Dante. He looked at her. She stopped laughing. Naomi Pierce, the family attorney, was called in from the private dining room. She arrived wearing a slate gray suit and an expression that had likely ended arguments in courtrooms. She examined the order slip, then asked Vivian to write her initials 3 times on a blank card. Vivian did so without hesitation. VC clean, narrow, controlled. The blue initials on the wine slip were wider, the C leaning forward. Not a match, Naomi said. Vivian's shoulders relaxed. Curtis exhaled. Nolan reached for the slip. Then we have our answer. Elena did not let go of the paper. No, every face turned toward her. She placed the order slip beside the altered shift log. Those initials are not hers. Curtis's mouth curved with relief. Exactly. Elena looked at him. They're yours. The room went still. Curtis gave a soft, offended chuckle. That is absurd. Elena opened her black notebook to the previous Friday and laid down a wine inventory correction Curtis had signed. Same wide V. Same forward-leaning C. He stared at it 1 second too long. Vivian recovered first. Managers sign on behalf of clients all the time. Not with their initials, Elena said. Dante looked from the 2 signatures to the key still hanging from Curtis's belt. Then his gaze dropped to the wine slip again. In the lower corner, almost hidden beneath the fold, someone had stamped the approval time. 8:49 p.m. Curtis had claimed he was in the ballroom then. Dante lifted his eyes. You were on camera at the head table at 8:49. Curtis nodded too quickly. Yes. Dante turned the slip over. Pressed into the back was a second timestamp from the locker room printer. 8:53 p.m. For minutes after Curtis said the paper had already been approved, the slip had been printed from the terminal beside Elena's open locker. No one moved. The little printer beside Elena's locker gave a soft mechanical click, as if it had decided to speak for itself. Curtis looked at the timestamp, then at Dante. Someone could have used my login. Someone did, Dante said. His voice stayed level. That made Curtis pale faster than anger would have. Vivian stepped between them without appearing to. This is exactly why internal reviews exist. A rushed conclusion could damage innocent people. Her eyes settled on
Elena.
especially when one employee has been collecting private documents for months. Elena held the torn wine slip against her apron. The blood beneath the fabric had begun to dry, pulling at her skin whenever she breathed. I did not collect private documents. Curtis gave a strained smile. Your locker says otherwise. My locker says I keep copies after numbers change. Dante looked at the cracked old phone in Nolan's hand. Open it. Nolan passed it to Elena. We should let forensic security handle that. Elena did not take her eyes off Dante. If they touch it first, I lose the original again. The word again landed harder than she intended. Dante noticed. You unlock it, he said. Elena peeled back the clean strip of tape someone had replaced and pressed the power button. The screen flickered twice before showing an old photograph of her mother standing behind a diner counter, laughing with a coffee pot in one hand. Elena entered a 6-digit code. The phone opened to a folder labeled Receipts. 312 images. Table checks. Tip sheets. Clock-out slips. Faces reflected accidentally in polished silverware. Curtis stared at the screen with the expression of a man seeing a locked door open onto a room he had forgotten existed. Elena scrolled to a photograph dated March 14th. A guest transfer receipt filled the screen. Michael Rusk. Harbor Light Vendor Code 0719. Approved for private access. That name appeared here before, Elena said. 3 months ago. Vivian's expression softened into pity. A repeated clerical error is not a conspiracy. Elena enlarged the image. In the lower right corner, beside the receipt, a man's hand rested on the service counter. Silver cuff link. Lighthouse emblem. Dante leaned closer. His silence changed. It no longer held doubt alone. It held recognition. I've seen that mark, he said. Vivian answered too quickly. It belongs to the charity board. Dante looked at her. She had not been shown the photograph clearly enough to identify it. The room seemed to contract around that mistake. Vivian recovered with a faint smile. I recognize our logo anywhere. Elena swiped to the next image. Same receipt taken 11 seconds later. The man had turned slightly. His face appeared in the stainless steel reflection behind him. Not clear enough for a stranger. Clear enough for Dante. He had attended the man's funeral. Michael Rusk had burned to death inside a sedan on Interstate 95 11 months earlier. Curtis reached for the phone. Elena pulled it against her chest. Don't. The single word stopped him. Dante's eyes moved to Curtis's hand, then to Elena's grip around the old device. Make a copy, he told Naomi. In front of her, Naomi connected the phone to her laptop. As the files transferred, one notification appeared at the top of the screen. Draft message recovered.
Elena frowned.
She had never drafted anything on that phone after her mother died. Naomi opened it. The message contained the same threat sent to Vivian's charity, but the wording was different. No demand for $50,000. Only one sentence. A dead man has been served twice. The metadata showed it had been created 3 months earlier, then deleted at 8:47 that evening. Curtis had been standing beside Elena's locker at 8:47. Vivian folded her arms. Anyone could have planted that. Dante kept looking at the lighthouse cuff link in the photograph. Years earlier, he had approved that emblem personally for one person's private security access. He turned the phone so Vivian could see the reflection. You told me Harbor Light never used contractors inside my buildings. Vivian's smile remained, but her eyes did not. Dante set the phone down between them. Then why is your dead contractor standing in mine? Dante kept his eyes on Vivian until the room became too quiet for anyone to pretend nothing had changed. Then he turned to Naomi. Pull every Harbor Light contract. Vivian's expression stayed composed. Dante, the charity has hundreds of agreements. Start with mine. Naomi closed the laptop halfway, shielding the screen from everyone except Elena and Dante. Her fingers moved quickly. Curtis shifted near the door. Nolan did not. The dishwasher started again behind the wall, plates rattling through steam while rain tapped the narrow window above the sink. For a few seconds, the room sounded almost ordinary. Then Naomi's screen filled with names. 3 women had been transferred through Harbor Light during the past year. Each had been placed under veil protection after agreeing to testify about trafficking routes through the docks. Each file contained the same vendor code, 0719. Each transfer had been approved through a guest access account tied to Michael Rusk. Dante read the first name, Talia Gomez. Missing, Naomi said. The second, Renee Wallace. Missing. The third, Josie Lane. Naomi's voice lowered. Declared a runaway by Harbor Light. Elena looked at the dates. Her fingers moved across her notebook until she found 3 dinner shifts marked with the same strange table designation. 11. No table 11 had existed at Vale House for nearly 2 years. They used the table number as a signal, she said. Curtis gave a short laugh that died when nobody joined him. Or it is simply an old code left in the system. Elena slid the notebook toward Dante. Then why does it appear only on the nights those women disappeared? Dante looked at the dates. March 14th, June 2nd, September 19th. On each night, Vivian's charity had hosted a private donor dinner. On each night, Curtis had changed Elena's shift after clockout. On each night, security footage from the service corridor contained a gap shorter than 1 second. Not enough for most people to notice. Enough for someone who needed the record to look complete. Vivian folded her hands. You are allowing a frightened employee to build a pattern from coincidence. Elena looked at her. You keep calling me frightened like it means I cannot count. The words were quiet. They landed harder than shouting would have. Dante's gaze moved to Elena's torn apron, to the dried blood beneath her name, then back to the contract on Naomi's screen. Who authorized Harbor Light to receive witness locations? He asked. Naomi enlarged the signature page. Dante Vale. Digital approval. Biometric confirmation. Time stamped 11 months earlier at 3:18 a.m. Dante did not blink. I was in Rome. Nolan's jaw tightened. Vivian's voice remained soft. You sign things while traveling. Not at 3 in the morning. Naomi opened the authentication log. The biometric signature had been generated from a backup device registered to the Vale estate. Only 4 people had access. Dante, Luca, Nolan, and Vivian. No one spoke. A phone vibrated against the steel counter. Elena flinched before she could stop herself. It was Dante's. He read the message, then turned the screen toward Naomi. One of the remaining witnesses had missed a scheduled check-in 20 minutes earlier. Vivian reached for Dante's sleeve. You should not make decisions while angry. He looked down at her hand until she removed it. I'm not angry. His voice was almost gentle. That was when Elena understood why powerful men lowered their voices before other people became afraid. Dante looked at her. What do you want? Curtis glanced at Vivian, expecting money to enter the room. Elena did not. My name cleared. She pressed the broken tag flat against the notebook. And those women found. Dante nodded once. Not a promise. An order forming. He told Naomi to copy every contract, every access log, every receipt tied to 0719. He told Luca by text to move the surviving witnesses without using Vale security. Then he looked at Nolan. No one learns we checked. Nolan's face remained still, but a pulse moved in his neck. Dante had trusted that man with his doors for 9 years. He had trusted Vivian with the people behind them. Now, on Naomi's screen, the authorization trail ended at a device inside his own home. Dante looked at his bride as if seeing the distance between her smile and the truth for the first time. The person he had doubted was bleeding in front of him. The person he had trusted had signed with his hand. Dante did not accuse anyone. He returned to the ballroom and asked the band to continue playing. That was the first move. The second was quieter. He sent Naomi to the private office with copies of the contracts. He told Luca to move the remaining witnesses using drivers outside the Vale network. Then he turned to Elena. If they believe the name tag still has the original carbon, what happens? Elena looked through the glass doors at Vivian, who was smiling beneath the chandelier while a senator's wife adjusted the train of her gown. "They won't come for me," she said. "They'll send someone for the tag." Dante's eyes settled on the broken plastic in her hand. "Where?" "Somewhere they think only staff can reach." 5 minutes later, Elena walked back into the service corridor carrying an empty silver tray. Her bloodied apron had been replaced, but she refused the new one Curtis offered. She folded the torn apron herself and placed it inside a clear evidence bag. The broken name tag remained pinned crookedly above her heart with a safety pin Naomi found in the office. One half said EL. The other said ENA. Together, the name looked wounded but readable. In the evidence locker beneath the kitchen stairs, Dante placed a copy of the carbon slip inside a small envelope. Naomi hid a recorder beneath the shelf. Luca replaced the locker key with one marked by a thin line of ultraviolet powder. The camera above the door blinked once, then went dark on purpose. "Too obvious," Elena said. Dante looked at her. "What is?" "The camera. Curtis knows when it fails." She pointed to the stainless steel warming cabinet across the hall. Its polished door reflected the locker entrance from 20 feet away. "Use the pastry camera. Catches the reflection." Dante gave one nod.
No pras. No smile.
But Luca moved the feed. Elena wrote a false vendor code on the envelope, changing only the final digit. 0718 instead of 0719. "Why that number?" Naomi asked. "Because if it appears in an order to erase files, we'll know where the order came from." They returned to the ballroom separately. Dante took his seat beside Vivian. Elena resumed service as if the room had not watched her bleed. A waiter handed her a tray of untouched champagne. Her fingers shook once beneath the silver rim. She tightened them until the glass stopped trembling. Vivian watched her approach. "You're still working?" Her voice was warm enough for the table to hear. "How brave." Elena set down a glass in front of her. "I was told to finish my shift." Vivian's eyes flicked toward Dante. "By whom?" "Mr. Vale." Dante lifted his bourbon but did not drink. Vivian smiled. The smile came half a second late. Across the room, Curtis's phone vibrated. He looked at the screen and immediately turned it face down. Dante noticed. So did Elena. She carried the tray back toward the kitchen. Curtis followed 2 minutes later. On the pastry monitor, his reflection entered the corridor. His hand paused on the locker door. Then he stepped away and called someone instead. The recorder picked up only his side. "She kept the carbon." Silence. "No, the tag is in evidence." Another silence. Curtis lowered his voice. "Cross says wipe Harbor 9 before midnight." In the ballroom, Vivian's phone lit beneath her napkin. She did not touch it. Dante saw the screen glow with one incoming call from Curtis. He said nothing. Elena did. She deliberately placed the wrong champagne glass in front of Vivian's father, the one reserved for Dante. Vivian reacted without thinking. "Not that one. The left glass goes to him." Elena stopped. No one had told Vivian the left glass was different. Dante turned his head slowly. "How did you know?" Vivian's hand froze beside her napkin. "Know what?" "Which glass was mine?" For the first time that evening, she looked at Elena before answering him. Behind the kitchen wall, a file transfer began uploading from the Harbor Light server. The vendor code entered into the deletion command was 0718. Vivian understood then. Not from Dante's face. From Elena's. The waitress was no longer asking to be believed. She was watching the trap close, and Dante Vale was standing on her side of it. Dante did not look at Vivian. He looked at the untouched glass in front of him. Then at the faint ring of moisture beneath it. Then at Elena. "Put it down," he said. Elena set the tray on the head table with both hands. Crystal touched polished wood in one soft, careful sound. Around them, the string quartet kept playing for 3 more measures before the first violinist noticed nobody was breathing and lowered her bow. Vivian smiled at the guests. "This has gone far enough." Her voice was steady again. Public steady. "A staff member has manipulated private records, planted messages, and disrupted an event involving elected officials. Dante, we should handle this with dignity. We are, he said. Naomi entered through the service doors carrying a laptop and a sealed evidence envelope. Luca followed with Curtis beside him. Curtis's jacket was still buttoned, but ultraviolet powder glowed blue across his right fingertips. Vivian's father rose from his chair. What is the meaning of this? Dante gave him no answer. He moved the silver centerpiece from the middle of the head table and cleared a space where Elena's blood had dried beneath the edge of a white napkin. No one had cleaned it completely. A thin, rust-colored line remained. Here, he said. Naomi placed the laptop over the stain. The first file opened without sound. Security footage from the pastry camera showed Curtis entering the reflected corridor, stopping at the evidence locker, then lifting his phone. The second file carried audio. His voice filled the ballroom, smaller than it had ever sounded in person. She kept the carbon. Cross says wipe Harbor 9 before midnight. Vivian did not flinch. Cross is a common name. Elena reached into the clear evidence bag and removed the false receipt. The vendor code on this copy was 0718. Naomi opened the deletion log. The same number appeared in the command issued from Harbor Light's private server 7 minutes later. Vivian's eyes moved to Elena. Not fear. Calculation. That proves someone repeated a number they overheard. No, Elena said. Her voice was quiet enough that the guests leaned forward. It proves someone tried to erase a file that never existed. Naomi clicked again. Bank records filled the screen. 3 shell companies. Repeating transfers. Payments routed through Harbor Light accounts, then into an account opened under Elena Marrow's name. $10,000 deposited 3 days earlier. Vivian turned slightly toward Dante. There. You see. Dante's face did not move.
Elena nodded.
The account is mine. A murmur broke across the room. Vivian's relief came too soon. Elena lifted the broken name tag from her apron and placed it beside the laptop. Under the ultraviolet light Naomi held above it, blue carbon marks surfaced on the back of the plastic. Not random smears. Numbers pressed backward. Into the cheap clear shell when Vivian had torn it across the receipt hidden beneath. Naomi enlarged the transfer record. The routing number matched. Harbor Light. The same account that had funded the frame against Elena had left its imprint on the object Vivian tried to destroy. Dante stared at the glowing numbers. For the first time that night he went pale. Not because he finally understood Vivian had lied. Because he understood how long she had been using his name, his buildings, his protection. Naomi opened one final file. Original contract. Page 7 had been replaced. The archived version gave Harbor Light access only to shelter funding. The signed version on Dante's server granted access to witness relocation schedules. His biometric approval appeared at the bottom. Timestamped while he was in Rome. Vivian's private device had generated the signature. Dante took one step back from the table. He looked at Elena's torn apron, at the old phone, at the altered shift log, at the woman he had allowed everyone in the room to call confused while she bled under his roof. I watched them make you prove it, he said. Elena held his gaze. You watched because they had better clothes. The truth struck harder than accusation. He could not answer. Vivian stood. Dante. Do not humiliate both families over the word of a waitress. Elena lifted the silver plate that had covered her bloodstain. The mark beneath it appeared in full view of the room. That is why you chose me, she said. Because you thought no one would look twice. Dante removed the ring from his finger, placed it beside the broken name tag, and looked at Naomi. Call my attorney. The consequences did not arrive with sirens. They arrived in folders. Naomi locked the original contracts in evidence sleeves before anyone left the ballroom. Federal agents took control of the Harbor Light servers before dawn. By noon, Vivian Cross had lost access to the charity, her family's attorneys had stopped returning calls, and the engagement announcement had disappeared from every public page connected to the Vale name. Curtis was removed from the restaurant in front of the same staff he had ordered to.
Ignore Elena.
Nolan was suspended. then charged after the cloned biometric device was found in his home safe. 3 weeks later, investigators located Talia Gomez, Renee Wallace, and Josie Lane at a private recovery facility in Virginia operating under a shell company funded by Harbor Light. They were alive, frightened, heavily monitored. Alive. Elena learned that part from Naomi in a small conference room overlooking the harbor. Rain dragged silver lines down the windows. Her old phone sat inside a clear evidence bag on the table, still showing the photograph of her mother behind the diner counter. "Your employment record has been corrected," Naomi said. "The statement from your previous restaurant is being challenged. We also found altered tip reports here going back 22 months. Elena looked at the figures. Hundreds of unpaid hours. Thousands in missing gratuities spread across cooks, dishwashers, bussers, and servers who had never believed they could prove it. "They get it back?" she asked. "Every dollar we can document. Not just me. Not just you." Dante stood near the window, his hands in the pockets of a dark coat. He had spoken less since the night of the rehearsal dinner. Not because he had nothing to say, because apology sounded cheap beside what his silence had allowed. "The restaurant closes for 1 week," he said. "Every camera archive moves to an independent server. Managers lose access to employee complaints. Tip audits happen monthly." Elena studied him. "Who controls the complaints?" "Not me." That answer mattered. He had hired an outside labor attorney and given the staff the right to report abuse without passing through management, security, or the Vale family. He had also paid for independent counsel for every employee questioned in the investigation.
No loí el agreements. No saí lens clauses. No faber soud.
Dante slid an envelope toward Elena. She did not touch it. "If that is money, I don't want it." "It isn't." Inside was a signed statement accepting responsibility for failing to protect the staff under his name. The second page restored every shift Curtis had altered. The third offered Elena a position helping build the new reporting system, not a gift, a job with a salary, benefits, authority, and an outside board she could appeal to if Dante ever tried to interfere. "You can say no," he said. Elena read every page before signing. For months later, Vale House reopened its main dining room. The white tablecloth from the rehearsal dinner had been preserved as evidence, but the table itself remained. Elena requested that people should remember where the lie had been told. On opening morning, the staff gathered beneath the chandeliers. Dante stood beside them, not in front. He apologized publicly. To Elena, to the kitchen, to every worker whose hours, tips, or words had been treated as disposable. He did not ask for forgiveness. Elena respected him more for that. Naomi handed her a small velvet box. Inside lay the broken name tag, repaired with a thin silver seam. The crack was still visible. Beneath Elena Marrow, a new line had been engraved. Witness liaison. Dante held it out, but did not pin it on her. Elena took it and fastened it herself to a clean white apron. The silver line caught the morning light. That evening, after the last table left, a young dishwasher dropped a glass near the service station. He froze, already apologizing. Elena crouched beside him and handed him a towel. "Start with what happened," she said. "Not with why you think it was your fault." Across the empty dining room, Dante heard her. He lowered his eyes for a moment, as if the sentence had found the place in him that punishment could not reach. Elena poured 2 cups of fresh coffee, set one at the far end of the counter for him, and kept the other warm between her hands. Her repaired name tag rested above her heart, no longer proof that someone had tried to erase her, but proof that they had failed.